Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. The flickering lamplight never reaches the far corners of the ward. The air is still, but you smell old urine and lye soap. Somewhere a woman cries not in sudden panic, but in an endless rhythmic moan, as if her voice itself has forgotten silence. You are not dreaming. You lie on a narrow cot with metal legs and a lice-bitten blanket stiff with age and skin oil. Around you, other cots, other bodies. Some shift, some hum tunelessly. One man rocks gently, hitting the wall with the back of his head in steady knocks. The sound is soft, but it gathers weight the longer it continues. There is no light from the outside world, no windows. The high stone walls of the asylum breathe only inward. Your mouth is dry. Your wrists itch. You remember nothing clearly, just fragments. A blue door, a metal carriage, hands gripping your shoulders. You do not recall arriving, but you're here now. And you are wearing a uniform coarse cotton grey, no buttons. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale, and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. They call this place a hospital, but no one greets you. No one tells you why you're here. A woman in white, her hair bound in tight curls beneath a bonnet, moves between beds. She doesn't look at you. She smells like vinegar and soap. She carries a thick wooden spoon. It taps against her skirt as she walks. You try to sit up. A strap around your ankle pulls taut. Leather cracked and damp. It's buckled to the bed frame. You are not the only one. Most others are bound in some way. Some by the foot, others by both hands. One woman in the far corner lies flat face down, her limbs tied at the corners like meat to be salted. You say nothing. You've learned already noise is punished. A bell rings somewhere distant. Not a gentle chime, more like an iron rod struck against a pipe. The others stir. A few begin to hum or mutter, but none rise. You hear keys, footsteps, boots on stone. The door opens not loudly but with certainty. 3 men enter. One wears a black waistcoat and carries a notebook. The other 2 wear heavy coats and gloves even indoors. Their faces are still and unreadable. The one with the notebook approaches your bed. He doesn't ask how you feel. He doesn't ask your name. He lifts your wrist and counts your pulse. You see your own arm tremble in his grip. He frowns not in concern but in calculation. Melancholic agitation, he mutters. Possible hysteria. He writes something. You want to speak, but your tongue feels thick foreign. You don't know the right words, and you already understand this, that the wrong words will keep you here. He turns to the men, nods, they move on. You have been classified, and that is all it takes. In the year 1882, over 40% of admissions to London's asylums were made without any direct conversation with the patient. Sometimes by family, sometimes by police. Often by strangers. You don't know who signed the paper for you. That night you do not sleep. The moaning woman never stops. At some point she begins to whisper a name. Over and over. Elsie. Elsie. In the dark, someone urinates. You hear it patter onto the floor beside your cot. No one reacts. There are no nurses overnight. The walls are not padded. That is a myth. They are bare stones smeared with old stains that no one scrubs anymore. One long groove runs along the lower wall, where men have dragged their nails for years. There is a rumor, you will learn, that one patient escaped, but not recently. You hear a cough turn to a scream in the far room. then silence. You do not ask what happened. You are learning the rules. This is the beginning of your treatment. There is no warmth here, only order, only waiting. A metal pail is kicked across the floor. You jolt not from rest, but from a shallow stupor, where your mind hovered like fog over stagnant water. Around you, bodies shift in unison. No one protests. No one questions the ritual. This is not a place of rebellion. Breakfast is a lump of grey porridge served on dented tin. A wooden spoon rests beside it, swollen with splinters. The nurse, if that is what she is, places it on your lap without a glance. You cannot sit upright easily. The strap is still there. Your wrist is raw. You try to ask a question, something simple. Where am I? But it doesn't leave your mouth. Because you've seen what happens when others speak without permission. The man 2 beds down attempted conversation yesterday. He asked the time. They took him. You haven't seen him since. You eat the porridge. It tastes like wet chalk. Someone down the row vomits after the first bite. No one helps her. She weeps quietly and swallows the rest. This is care. The doctor returns mid-morning. He wears the same waistcoat, but today he carries a small black case. Inside are the tools of the trade metal tongue depressor's brass syringes and a device like a pair of shears with wires. You do not know its name. You will learn it soon. He begins with the woman who screams at shadows. Her sobs echo in the corridor even after they close the door. You hear the click of restraints, a low mechanical whine. A sudden scream cut off too quickly. Electroconvulsive therapy was widely adopted in the Victorian era, often without anesthetic. The goal was not relief, it was silence. Your turn doesn't come today, not yet. Instead, you are dragged more precisely to the bath ward. 2 men escort you down a corridor tiled in green wet underfoot. The air is thick with steam and bleach. You enter a room where iron tubs sit like cattle troughs filled with water so hot it scalds the air. No privacy, no kindness. A woman strips your clothes with brisk efficiency. She wears gloves and a brooch shaped like a cross. She speaks to no one, including you. They lower you in. The heat is unbearable. Your skin flushes. Your heart races. But you do not move. You have seen what happens when someone splashes. Hot baths lasting hours were prescribed to calm the nerves. Many emerged with burns. But the goal was not comfort. It was control. You are not allowed out until your lips turn pale. Later, you are placed in a day room. It is called that though the windows are shuttered and the oil lamps always burn. A painting of Queen Victoria hangs crookedly above the fireplace. Her eyes faded into ghostly hollows. Here you sit. That is your task. No books, no letters, no clocks. You sit, and you are observed. One man scratches his face until it bleeds. Another whispers Bible verses, but only the ones about wrath and fire. A young girl, no older than 15, stares at the ceiling and smiles for hours. She is the only one who seems at peace. You wonder what she sees. You do not speak. You do not ask. Someone once said a question here was like shouting into a well, except the well shouts back. In the evening, a man is carried in on a stretcher. His eyes are open, but he is not awake. His mouth bubbles when he breathes. You recognize him. He was in the bath ward yesterday. You are learning, piece by piece, the shape of this place. Not just its architecture, but its rules, its cold rhythms, its silent threats. And one truth above all, once you're admitted, you do not leave. At least not whole. Some escape in their minds. They drift into repetition, into tics, into nursery rhymes. You've started humming one yourself. You don't remember learning it. That night, a nurse stands by your bed longer than usual. She adjusts the strap at your foot, checks your pulse, and then hesitates. Just a breath, as if she sees something behind your eyes. Then she's gone, and you're alone again, surrounded by the whimpering dark. You whisper to yourself, not words, just noise, the sound of something alive still trying to exist, and you realize something deeply chilling. You are beginning to understand why some people never want to get better. Because here, at least, the suffering has structure. You are not given a name here. Gasan, you had one. Once an ordinary thing sewn into your dresses, whispered by your mother while brushing your hair. But in these halls, names decay. You're a patient, a case, a condition. The nurses call you number 27. They call the man who eats ash 51. The silent girl in the chair is 12. The doctors don't call you anything at all. In the early afternoon, you are summoned to the examination chamber. Not with words, but a firm hand on your shoulder. No explanation. No schedule. Only the door that opens and the corridor beyond. You are taken to a room filled with books, but not the kind you read. These are journals bound in black leather, rows upon rows. Clinical reports inked in a hand so precise it feels less human than the scalpel laid beside it. The physician doesn't look up as you enter. He gestures to the chair. You know the one. Steel frame, arm restraints, a chin rest. You sit. He begins by asking questions not about you, but about numbers. What is 4 plus 6? Can you count backward from 20? You answer. You obey. Then come the drawings. He holds up cards, ink blots, abstract horrors. You say what you see. A butterfly, a bat, a broken mirror. You hesitate on the last one. He writes that down. Every hesitation is a data point. Every blink, every twitch. When you finish, he writes more. You try to read it upside down. Subject displays passive compliance. Possible schizoid affect. Recommend continued observation. The word recommend feels heavier than a verdict. Then, the worst part, the mirror. A full-length thing mounted in a frame of blackened wood. He tells you to stand before it, to observe yourself, to describe what you see. At first, it's just your reflection, paler than you remember, Bonnier. But then, the room begins to dissolve behind the glass. You see not your face, but something older. Cracked skin, ink blot eyes. You blink. It blinks slower. Your hands tremble. Your reflection smiles. You do not. The physician marks something down. He does not ask what you saw. Later, you are returned to the ward. You pass the sewing room on the way. Inside, women stitch uniforms and napkins in silence. One of them has sewn her own initials into every hem. They found out last week. Her fingers were broken. Back in the ward, someone is missing. A girl who used to braid her hair with invisible ribbons. She isn't in her bed. You ask nothing. You do not even look too long. But later, a nurse brings in a folded white sheet stained rust red at the corner. You know where she went. Not out, not home, but below. The asylum has a basement. It's not on the map. You've heard of it in murmurs, in stifled cries. The place where the worst cases go. The ones who bite. The ones who forget how to walk. The ones who believe they are still outside. You believe she is there now. Dinner is bread, hard like brick. You soak it in weak tea, then chew. The man next to you won't eat. He says they put things in the bread. Messages, teeth. You try not to listen. Listening here is dangerous. It makes things real. After dinner, it's recreation hour. No one recreates. You sit in the common hall beneath a stained glass skylight depicting angels with swords. A priest arrives reading scripture aloud from a leather-bound Bible. He looks up only once, straight at you. He does not smile. Behind him, another nurse wheels in a new patient, young, too young. Her feet drag. Her eyes do not focus. She holds a broken doll. She is humming something soft. You recognize the tune. You've been humming it yourself. Is it spreading? Is madness contagious? At night they give you something to drink. A tonic, they say. A sedative. You sip. It burns like turpentine. You fall into sleep but not into rest. You dream of the mirror. And this time your reflection reaches out. You wake in your bed. But the sheets are different. Rougher. Damp. The ceiling has changed color. It used to be white. Now it's a heavy gray like a storm cloud pressed flat above your face. There are cracks that weren't there yesterday. Or maybe they were always there, and your mind simply refused to trace them. The cracks form lines. The lines form shapes. You turn your face away before they form words. They're watching you more closely now. Not the nurses, not the doctors, the walls. You don't tell anyone that part. You did once, and you remember what happened. The days are starting to collapse into each other. The clock in the corridor ticks, but the hands never move. The sun rises and falls through a grimy window, but you no longer believe in time. Time here is elastic, worn thin like thread. This morning they forgot to bring your shoes. You ask the nurse, but she looks at your bare feet and says, "You've never had shoes." You remember the shoes, leather with laces like little ropes. You remember tying them. You remember someone else untying them. That part you try not to remember. At noon, the fire alarm rings. No one moves. No smoke. Just the sound shrill, metallic, eternal. It rings for 43 minutes. You count them. When it stops, the silence feels like a punishment. One man screams, another begins laughing and won't stop until he's gagged. You feel something shift under your bed. You don't look. Today is bath day. You are led to the tiled chamber with others silent, shuffling heads bowed. The tub is filled with water that smells of iron and lye. You undress in silence. The attendants scrub you with bristle brushes meant for horses. One of them hums while she scrapes. A soft, lilting lullaby. You recognize it, again. The girl from yesterday, the one with the broken doll, is watching you from a bench. Her feet don't touch the floor. She isn't blinking. You glance at her face. She isn't breathing. You look again. She's gone. You never hear her leave. Later, you are given a pen. You haven't touched ink in months. The nurse smiles as if offering you a gift. She says it's for therapy, for expression, for understanding the self. You are locked in a room with blank paper and a ticking metronome. You are told to write freely. You try. You write your name first. But the letters twist. They do not hold. Your hand cramps. The words turn into shapes, then into spirals, then into eyes, eyes upon eyes. Hundreds of them, all open, all watching. You do not remember drawing them. When the nurse returns, she doesn't take the paper. She takes the pen. Your fingers are bleeding. You hadn't noticed. Shine. Dinner is cancelled. A blackout. The lights flicker once, then darkness. You sit in the ward and listen to your own breath, then someone else's, right beside you, but no one is there. The girl in the bed across from yours begins to speak in Latin. You know it's Latin, though you've never studied the language. Every syllable sounds like it belongs in a church or a tomb. She says a name. You feel it slide behind your ribs. That night you dream again. This time the mirror is cracked, but your reflection steps through it anyway. You open your eyes at midnight. Something is pulling the sheets off your body, but no one is there. You sit up slowly. The bed creaks louder than it should. The walls seem closer now, as if the room has shrunk by a few inches in every direction. You count the floor tiles. There are more than yesterday. You start again. Different number. You try a third time. The tiles keep changing, like they're moving when you blink. Laughing silently at your confusion. You stop counting. You start listening. There's a sound beneath the floor, like breathing. Not human, too deep, too wet. In the hallway, a nurse walks past without legs. She floats. You try not to look directly at her, but your head turns on its own. Her face is serene, pale. Her eyes have no pupils, just a sea of milky grey. You feel her gaze brush against your mind like a feather dipped in acid. She smiles, then vanishes through a wall. The silence that follows is worse. You run back to your bed, but your bed isn't there. In its place is a metal gurney, stained, and someone is lying on it. Someone who looks like you, but the face is wrong. The mouth is too wide. The eyelids flutter like moth wings, and as you stare, the chest rises. It shouldn't rise. It opens its eyes and smiles. You flee. Beselmt, you don't know how long you run. Corridors fold. Doors lead back into themselves. A window shows the same tree from 4 angles at once. You open a door and find yourself inside a different room, one made of glass. Your reflection surrounds you. 1,000 copies, but none of them match your movements. One turns its head too late. Another doesn't blink at all. A third smiles while you scream. You turn away and the glass shatters. Bang. The alarm sounds again. You're back in the common room. The television flickers. No signal. Then static. Then a face. Not a real one. Drawn, but somehow alive. Its mouth moves out of sync with its words. You are not sick. You are awake. The others are dreaming. Go back to sleep, please. Before it notices, you blink. The screen goes black. You try to remember who it is. You wish you hadn't. The next morning, the nurses say there was no power outage, no blackout, no alarm. You try to argue, but your voice doesn't sound like yours anymore. It's higher or lower. It echoes in your own skull. The nurse pats your shoulder and gives you pills. You take them, but they don't go down. They dissolve in your mouth like ashes. You try to spit them out, but there's no taste, no tongue. You run to the mirror and find nothing. Your reflection is gone. Tab, you are not alone in your room. A shape sits at the foot of your bed. It whispers your name in a language that does not belong in any world. Your name has more syllables now. It keeps adding them. It will never finish. You shut your eyes and pray, but you forgot how. Your hands fold, but not into prayer. They become wings. Feathers sprout from your knuckles. Your skin splits into script. Ancient, crawling. You begin to understand what the walls were trying to say, but now they're quiet. They're listening, because something else has started speaking. Ditusveitai, you sleep at last, and in your dream the asylum is on fire. But no one burns. The flames simply consume light. The doctors walk through it with empty clipboards. The patients clap without hands. And you smile, because you realize you were never put here. You arrived, you belonged. The asylum didn't hold you captive. It grew around you, like a second skin, a cocoon. And tonight it hatches. There's a scratching sound, faint at first, like a mouse in the walls. But then you realize it's inside your skull. You dig your fingers into your temples, but there's no relief. Only pressure, then warmth, then crack. Your vision splits, not from pain, from revelation. You're not seeing with eyes anymore. You're seeing through something, behind the world, beneath it. The asylum vanishes, no it peels back. The corridors curl like dead leaves. The wallpaper bubbles. The floor softens into meat. The beds are no longer furniture. They're creatures now, sleeping, breathing, waiting to be fed. And the staff, they aren't pretending anymore. The nurses' skin sloughs off in folds. The doctors' mouths unhinge, too wide, far too wide. And in the echo of their laughter, you realize they were never here to heal you. They were trying to keep you in, because you know too much. You walk through a door that wasn't there before. The sign above it reads discharge. Inside is a child's bedroom, yours. Same posters, same books, same cracked ceiling, but something is wrong. The stuffed animals watch you too closely. The closet door is ajar just enough to show the eye. Only one. It blinks. You hear your mother's voice call you for dinner. But she's been dead for 15 years. You answer anyway. And a hand reaches from under the bed to hold yours. It's small, familiar, cold. You squeeze it back, because you remember now. This is the dream. The asylum was the waking world. This is home. Kasim, the stars shine through the ceiling. You don't question it. You've stopped asking questions. You lie in the bed, the one that smells like your old pajamas, like dust, like comfort. The sheets wrap around you on their own. The room breathes with you. You hear lullabies in reverse. You feel your bones unknit, softening into warmth. And finally, you sleep. Not the sleep of exhaustion, but the deep sleep, the ancient one. The one that only comes once the screaming ends. And somewhere in the real world, a nurse looks at your empty bed and crosses your name off the list. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight, we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. A single street lamp flickers outside your window. The air is still, but behind that silence an older sound waits. A corridor, a ledger, a list of names about to vanish. You are one of them. It begins with your boots. You do not remember walking this far, but they are caked in dried mud, and your soles have worn thin. You do not know the name of the town, only that fog hides its buildings like secrets swallowed whole. You arrive not at a shelter, but at a gate, tall, iron. It creaks open, and you do not need to knock. There is no welcome, only entry. Inside a clerk waits. His candle is low and his ink is nearly gone. He does not speak your name. He writes it, slowly, with a quill that stutters across the paper like an afterthought. You realize that from this moment on, the life you had is no longer recorded. Only this one will remain. Your file begins with the word pauper, and your future ends with a blank line. The room smells of rot and lie. Someone mopped recently, but the blood in the cracks of the floorboards hasn't lifted. You are given a number, and then another number. The first tells you where to sleep. The second tells you when. Before you reach your cot, a woman removes your clothes. You do not get them back. The uniform is not tailored nor warm. It is stiff grey and scratched in places where lice had to be burned out. You put it on in front of strangers, and they do not turn away. There is nothing scandalous left in your body. just utility. The first bell rings. You do not know what it means yet, but your spine does. It jerks. It understands. They lead you to the chapel, not for comfort, for silence. The preacher does not smile. His sermon is memorized, not believed. A passage from Leviticus, something about obedience and humility. The elderly beside you mouth the words as if their lips are pulled by invisible thread. You do not mouth anything. You listen to coughs, to bone against wood, to one of the boys far in the back trying not to cry. Then it ends, but nothing changes. You are taken down a hall. The hallway narrows as it descends. No one speaks, but everyone breathes heavily, like it's allowed here. You begin to learn the rhythm breath in step forward. Breath out, lose another thought. You pass through a door with a steel plate nailed into the wood. The plate says, Men's Ward 7, but you notice something stranger. Beneath the plate, beneath the grime, there are scratches. Numbers, tally marks. One for each year maybe, or each day. Your cot is iron. Its mattress is straw. You cannot lie down without coughing from the dust. The room is lit by a single gas lamp that gutters as if afraid. You hear someone muttering nearby. A name. Their own over and over again. The floor smells of piss, but the windows are locked tight. You begin to realize this isn't shelter. This is containment. The man beside you has no shoes. You ask him why. He does not answer. He just points to his feet, blistered, bandaged, and red. You understand. Outside, the fog thickens. You wonder if anyone even saw you enter. And then you remember the face of the clerk, not his expression, just the way his eyes didn't meet yours. You are not the first. The gaslight hisses again. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. A whistle blows in the hallway. No one tells you why. You try to sleep, but your name has already begun to vanish. You do not dream. The night in the workhouse does not allow it. Instead, you float between coughs, between rustlings, between the occasional shout that dies as quickly as it came. When the sun rises, though, you cannot see it. A whistle sounds again, and someone bangs a tin rod along the hallway wall. You are not allowed to wake slowly. You are not allowed to stretch. Your body obeys faster than your thoughts. Soon, you are upright and already moving with dozens of others, all in the same uniform, all with the same eyes. There is no breakfast. There is gruel. A grey liquid served with a metal ladle that hasn't been cleaned properly in months. It smells of oats mildew and resignation. You do not complain. No one does. Even the newcomers, even the children, their complaints have been trained out. Your tin bowl has a dent. You wonder whose head it came from. There is one spoon passed around. You wipe it on your sleeve before using it. But the sleeve is filthier than the spoon. It tastes of salt and something else, iron. You are given no time to sit. You must eat standing. Those who drop their bowls lose their meals. You watch a boy's hands shake too much to hold his, and then you watch him weep into the corner of the room as a matron walks by and says nothing. Then the work begins. You are assigned to the rope room. The name sounds benign. It is not. You walk down a corridor with soot-covered walls. There are no decorations here, no signs of humanity, only numbers. Inside the rope room, the smell of old hemp chokes you before you cross the threshold. Broken fibers float through the air like little ghosts. Every breath burns. You are told to pick oakum strands of tarred rope from old ships torn apart and hardened by salt and sun. You are given no gloves. The tar clings to your fingers. It gets beneath your nails. You are expected to sit on a wooden bench just wide enough for discomfort and unpick rope until your hands go raw. The man next to you has done this for years. His fingertips are black, cracked open like dried bark. You look away. He says nothing. There are rules. If you talk, you lose your meal. If you slow, you are switched. If you stop, you are removed. No one says where removed leads. Hours pass. You are not told the time. You are not told how long remains. There are no clocks here, only the bells, and they do not ring for you. Your thoughts wander. You wonder how long you could do this before your hands forget how to feel. You wonder if they'd let you work slower if your fingers bled more obviously. You wonder if the tar is in your lungs now. You think it is. And then a sound, not a scream, a silence. Someone collapses, an older man. He slumps sideways on his bench, rope still in his lap. The matron does not rush to him. She does not shout for help. She walks, slowly. She kneels beside him, places 2 fingers on his neck and waits. Her face does not change. Then she rises. 2 men arrive with a stretcher. The body is taken through a side door, not the one you entered. No words, no prayer. Just rope left behind unraveling slightly in the shape of his last breath. You pick up your pace. Your fingers are beginning to blister. You pretend not to notice. The pain is clean. The infection will not be. A new worker is brought in to replace the old man. No one makes room. He simply sits. The system adjusts. You do not speak. Time passes. And then, a bell. It is not the end of work. Just the call to chapel. Again. But this time, it is not scripture that awaits. Today, a funeral. Not for the old man, for someone else. The service is brief. 3 lines from Psalms. A name you do not recognize. You realize then you will not be remembered by name here, only by number. And your number is written in chalk beside your bed, easily erased. The air is colder now, not from outside, from within. You walk back toward the rope room, but are redirected. Laundry today. The matron says rotation prevents idleness. You want to ask what rotation prevents despair, but you don't. Instead, you carry wet, heavy linens down a stone stairwell into a room that reeks of soap and despair in equal measure. You wring fabric. You scrub stains that have long since settled, and your fingers already torn begin to peel. Hours pass again. You do not know how many, but you begin to memorize the shadows on the wall. You begin to recognize each echo in the corridor. You begin to accept that your life now belongs to the schedule, not to yourself. Another bell. You return to your cot. No dinner today. You were too slow in the laundry room. The man beside you is gone. Not the one with no shoes. He is still there, still awake. He says nothing, but you hear him whisper once very softly. It's Wednesday. You realize it has been 5 days, or perhaps it hasn't. The light dims again. The fog outside thickens. A clerk somewhere records another name. Not yours, not anymore. You close your eyes and try to remember what the sky looked like. You sleep beneath the screaming pipes. The beds are not beds. They are narrow, backless slabs of timber framed together like coffins on display. No mattress, no linen, no privacy. Just row after row of wooden planks, each separated by inches, each still warm from the last body's suffering. You are assigned a number, not a name. and that number is scrawled on a tiny scrap nailed into the foot of your board. A number that won't change until you do into something quieter. A bell rang earlier, dull and distant, and that meant lights out. The gas lamps hissed once and died. You now lie in a dormitory filled with other bodies, not people, not anymore. Just coughing, twitching, and muttering things they no longer remember are real. The stench of wet wool, old urine, and boiled meat hangs in the air like a fog. From the ceiling above, a pipe shrieks. It isn't broken. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It carries water for the kitchen and lavatories, and the turns in the plumbing groan when the temperature drops. But the noise isn't mechanical. It sounds like someone screaming very far away. You press your hand to the side of your head to drown it out. It doesn't work. There are 47 others in this room. You count them only because you've learned quickly that numbers are safer than names. The girl beside you, the one who might be 12, but already stoops like an old woman, she cries in a dry, soundless rhythm. She has no tears left, only memory. Something she held dear has been taken, but she no longer has the words for it. You listen to her sobs, the way others listen for rats. One of the women in the far bunk, a laundress, from the upper floors, has begun talking to someone who isn't there. She asks if the river is still frozen. Then she laughs softly and curls up like a paper burned at the edges. There are no blankets. They'd only encourage softness. You're expected to wake early and clean your own cot, even if it's already clean. If it's not, you will find yourself standing outside in the courtyard at dawn, brushing frozen filth from the floor with a wooden rake until your fingers bleed, and even that will be considered lenient. Your eyes begin to close, but then something shifts. The wall at your back is cold, too cold. You turn, and through the loose brickwork you feel the slow seep of January air. The window above you doesn't seal, and the wind licks your neck like a dog who has learned to hunger in silence. Beneath the screaming pipes, you hear another sound now, a soft knocking. Not fast, not urgent, just steady, like someone tapping their fingernails on the underside of your cot. You know better than to react. You've seen what happens when people speak about what they think they hear. The matron calls it moral confusion and recommends the same cure for all such fancies, a rag soaked in lye wiped across the mouth and tongue. So you remain still. The knocking stops after 13 taps, but the number lingers in your head long after. There are no clocks here, no windows in the dormitory, only the pipes. Their screams rise and fall with the outside air, as if some bitter god is turning the sky itself. You try to remember how long you've been here. 3 days now. You know that's wrong. Your fingernails have already grown brittle from the lime water. Your shoes have been replaced with fabric wraps, which you must wash yourself and wear again before dry. The skin between your toes has begun to crack. That takes longer than 3 days. You have a memory faint as breath standing in line at the admissions ward, where they shaved your hair, not all of it, just enough to make it ugly. Not enough to kill hope. Just enough to humiliate it. They said it was for cleanliness. But you watch the attendant keep the hair in a bag. You still wonder why. Historians still argue whether the knocking you hear at night came from the pipes themselves expanding in cold, or from the walls where certain shafts were never sealed correctly. One account speaks of a child who lived between the walls for months, crawling through air ducts like a rat after her mother died in the infirmary. They found her bones in 1912, or what they thought were her bones. No one mentions this in official records, but the workers knew. They always know. That's why no one sleeps next to the vents. And now you do. Somewhere in the room, a boy coughs blood. It isn't the first time tonight. You close your eyes again. This time, the pipes don't scream. This time, they whisper your name. You wake before the others, though you did not sleep. The pipes have gone quiet. That more than anything disturbs you. There's no light yet, but you can feel the change in the air, that faint metallic stillness before the bell. The wardens like to wait until your mind begins to hope it's morning, then ring it late. Just enough to remind you that time is no longer yours. You sit up slowly, listening for the familiar rustle of lice in your sheets. They never leave, only migrate. If you're quiet, you can hear them tiny lives thriving on suffering. One of your roommates is already dead. You can't tell who yet. But there's a stillness in the far corner of the room that doesn't breathe. No matron has come. No one will, until the smell begins to spread. In the workhouse, death is treated like spoiled bread. Something to be cleared, not mourned. You're sent to wash. The cold basin scalds worse than fire. Water fetched from outside hours ago turned to ice in parts too thick to pour, too thin to ignore. You're expected to scrub your face and neck and behind your ears with it, and your hands always your hands. They must be spotless even as your feet rot inside their wraps. There is soap. A pale yellowish brick of industrial lye rough enough to scrape bark from a tree. If it gets in your eyes, you go blind. This has happened. You remember the girl who screamed for 3 days, then stopped altogether. After the washing, you're lined up for roll call. The yard is mud. Frozen in the morning slush by midday. A man with a wheeze reads your number from a ledger. If you do not respond instantly, you are pulled aside. No reason given. Sometimes they forget to bring you back. One boy returned to the dormitory with 2 fingernails missing. He refused to say why. A month later, he threw himself from the upper stairwell. The impact didn't kill him, but he was no longer sent to wash. You've been assigned kitchen duty today. You descend the iron steps slick with old fat and arrive to the smell of grease and bone. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is ready boiled barley with a thin slurry of turnip water. The men who cook do so with bandaged hands and coughing lungs. One has a growth on his cheek that oozes when he leans forward. You serve the food in strict silence. No eye contact, no whispering. The woman in charge of discipline watches from the corner, a cane in her gloved hand. The gloves are always clean. It's the only clean thing about her. One of the elderly inmates refuses his portion. He says the rats have pissed in it again. You don't doubt him, you've seen them, big enough to fight cats. The woman with the cane hears him. Her stride is quiet but fast. A single blow cracks across the man's knuckles. He eats with shaking hands. No one speaks after that. After breakfast, the real work begins. You're sent to the laundry. The room is hotter than hell and stinks worse. Sweat, blood coal, and the sweet, sick smell of bleach and disease. Here they clean the linens of the entire workhouse, but also of the infirmary and of the asylum next door. The piles come marked by colour. You're told not to ask what the red stripe means. The water burns even when it doesn't boil. Your hands prune fast. You've seen the fingers of the long-timers cracked, curled inward like claws, joints swollen from the constant wringing. One girl's thumb has fused inward entirely. They call her the hook. She says less than anyone. You wring until your shoulders give out. Then you scrub. Then you wring again. The water turns a colour you can't describe. Something between rust and meat. You don't ask. Above the boilers, the ceiling drips with moisture. Once something else dripped a thick, dark red line. They said a pipe had burst, but someone swore it was blood, from where no one knows. But the boilers haven't worked right since. At midday you're allowed to stop, not to rest, but to march. Mandatory outdoor time, they call it. Fresh air for the lungs. But you know the real reason. There was a girl, they say, who went so long without seeing the sun that her eyes stopped responding to it. She screamed when they finally dragged her out. Begged to go back inside, said the shadows were softer. The matron beat her unconscious. They buried her after 2 days. Said it was a fever. But you heard otherwise. You're led into the courtyard. The light is dim grey, not quite warm. The mud clings to your heels, but you keep walking. Around the same track, dozens of you. A great silent wheel of bodies circling a hole where a tree once stood. You wonder what kind of tree it was, and why it was cut down. The matron watches from the door. She always does. And from the upper windows, the shadows of visitors watch too. They come to see the poor, like a museum. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they take notes. One of them drops a coin from the upper balcony once, and when a child reached for it, the overseer whipped him in front of the crowd. The visitors didn't object. One clapped. The sun disappears behind the chimney. The march ends, but the day is not over. You are told to report to the East Wing. There, in the old hallways with warped floorboards and rooms that no longer open, you are asked to carry out a special task. Clean the surgical room. No surgeries are performed anymore, not officially. But the room remains, locked, cold, filled with stains that never quite wash out. You enter it with a wooden pail and a rag. No gloves, no questions. Just a bucket of something brown and a silence that feels too deep for a building this old. There is no one else with you. And yet, as you mop the floor, you feel watched. Not from the doorway, but from underneath the table. And you remember what they said. Don't speak to the thing beneath the table, even if it speaks first. You listen for footsteps. You hear none. Not yet. Your hands have gone numb from the chill, or perhaps from scrubbing the same stone patch of the laundry wall for hours. The cloth you hold is no longer cloth, only the motion. The same repeated gesture over and over until your muscles no longer care what they clean. Your eyes drift upward, catching a blur of dripping grey from the skylight above, and for a moment you wonder if you're outside. But no, the roof is only broken, like the rules, like the children. Your shift ended an hour ago, but no bell rang. That means someone didn't finish their quota, so everyone stays. You work until the matron says stop, or until your fingers bleed through the soap, whichever happens first. You've started counting blisters to mark the days. Your left hand says it's Wednesday. Your right says nothing. The boy beside you, the one who doesn't talk not anymore, keeps rubbing his own arm raw. His shirt was taken last week after he fell asleep during Vespers. That was his third infraction. They don't let him wear sleeves now. His skin is starting to crack open like wet parchment. Still, he doesn't cry. Not after what happened to the girl who cried last month. You never saw her again. But you hear her sometimes, in the boiler room. Maybe that's imagination. Maybe it's worse. There is technically a nurse. She visits once every fortnight if she remembers. She carries a bottle of tonic that smells like vinegar and old pennies, and a needle that has been cleaned with fire exactly once the day the new inspector arrived 3 years ago. When she comes, the sick are scrubbed and paraded like cured dogs. After she leaves, the sick are forgotten. Some by choice, some not. Tonight is visiting night. That means standing in the yard in rows in case a relative comes. If no one comes for you, you still must stand, upright, silent, with hope, even if it's false. The punishment for failing to look hopeful is extra prayers. The prayers are led by Reverend Wicks. His sermons are 40 minutes of exhaled contempt. You do not want extra prayers. Sometimes families do come, just once. They look at what you've become, and then they do not come again. The wind cuts through your bones as you line up outside. There's a long pause before the iron gates screech open, and someone in a too fine coat steps in. You don't recognize him. He's led straight to the girls' wing. The matron's eyes don't blink once. No one is called from your line. Eventually, you're allowed back inside. The brick feels warmer than the air. In the corridor, you pass by the punishment board. Names are scratched in chalk. You see your own. You don't remember why. Maybe you spoke. Maybe you didn't kneel fast enough. The punishment is scheduled for Saturday. That's 2 nights from now. The punishments are private. They weren't always. Too many questions. You eat dinner in silence, potatoes boiled beyond taste. Sometimes there's gristle. Tonight, not even that. The tray is metal. You can see your own reflection in the smear. It doesn't look like you anymore, but maybe it never did. Later in the dormitory, you try to sleep. The coughing starts first, then the whispering, then the coughing again. One girl in the cot across begins to shake. Her breath stutters in and out. No one calls for help, not after what happened the last time. She quiets after an hour. No one checks if she's still breathing. They'll see in the morning. You dream that night not of escape, not of freedom, but of forgetting, of becoming a wall or a spoon, something that doesn't have to feel anything at all. You wake up colder than before. You don't know what time it is. Time here doesn't follow clocks, it follows keys. When the warden's boots echo past the hallway, it's morning. When the warden stops checking, it's night. When the iron key turns twice, it's Sunday. That's the day they let you touch books. Not to read, just to clean them. Today is not Sunday. The girl who was shaking last night, she's still. Still, as a rag doll with the stuffing punched out. No one touches her. Not until the assistant matron arrives, clipboard in hand, no expression on her face. She leans in, sighs, writes something, then mutters to the older boys to take the body away. That's all. You don't even hear her name spoken. The younger children watch with large dry eyes, no tears anymore. You suspect they learned earlier than you did crying gets remembered. And memories here aren't safe things. Outside, the fog has swallowed the sky again. London breathes soot and forgets to exhale. The smokestacks churn above the rooftops like open veins. You used to think the city meant freedom, a great sprawl of opportunity. Now you know better. The city doesn't care. It never did. Your morning is spent stitching. The thread bites your fingers already raw. Across from you, a boy is reciting something under his breath, a prayer or a formula, or maybe just a list of things he used to own. He stares through you like you're not there. No one is there really, except the matron. She always is. She walks behind your row. Her shoes click against the floorboards, the sound precise and sharp like she's carving each step into the earth. You don't dare flinch when she pauses behind you. You hold your breath. If you're lucky, she won't touch your neck. If you're unlucky, she moves on. You were lucky, but not for long. A letter arrives at noon. Letters mean someone cares, or someone pretends to. Yours is a thin envelope with no return address. Inside is a scrap of newspaper and a single line written in haste. Your brother drowned. They said he was running away. That's all. No dear, no love, no signature. Just that. You sit frozen while the rest of the children are marched to afternoon drills. You can't even picture your brother's face anymore, only his voice. He was the one who said he'd find you. The one who said you'd both leave someday somehow. That was 3 winters ago. You ripped the letter in half. Then again, then again. The pieces flutter down like sickly snow. That night, the bells ring wrong. 3 times, not 2. That's the code. That means fire, or revolt, or death. You're shoved from your cot and herded into the hallway. Somewhere someone is screaming, not in pain, in fury. You see a chair hurled through a window. See a boy you thought was mute punch a warden in the throat. The air smells like blood and kerosene. This is your chance. You run. You don't know where you're going. The smoke blinds you, the screams confuse you, but your feet move anyway. You crash through the girl's wing, through the laundry, through the chapel. You see bodies, still, moving, burning. You don't stop. Outside, the night air hits you like ice. You stumble into mud and fog and something worse, the city. Behind you, the workhouse burns. But ahead, more smoke, more stone, more factories. You don't know if you've escaped, but you're not inside anymore. And that's enough. For now. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. The snow falls like ash outside your window. It's quiet, too quiet for Moscow in winter. The kettle is still warm from tea you never finished, and your neighbor's cough, normally so rhythmic, so annoyingly human, has gone silent. You already know what's about to happen. There's no warning, no announcement, just the soft tap of fingers across your wooden doorframe. Then the boots, 3 pairs, leather polished, trained to stop on a dime. You don't move. The knock is almost polite, as if asking, not commanding. But you open the door anyway because hesitation could be mistaken for resistance. They don't need a reason. They never did. The man in the center doesn't make eye contact. The one on the left unfolds a paper you're not allowed to read. The one on the right checks his pocket watch. None of them say your name, but they all know it. Your body moves faster than your mind. You gather your coat, wool frayed, not warm enough. You reach for your boots, but a hand stops you. No need, someone mutters. You leave them behind anyway. They take you down the stairwell you've walked 1,000 times, but it feels narrower now. No one else stirs. No neighbors peer out. No barking dogs. The entire building has decided to sleep through your disappearance. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. Outside, the snow greets you without warmth. You're led into a waiting car. No markings, no windows in the back. Inside is humid and smells like old wool mildew and boiled potatoes. Another man is already seated, hands folded neatly. His eyes don't meet yours either. He's wearing house slippers. You ask where you're going. No one answers. The drive is long. The streets grow less familiar, then unfamiliar, then indistinguishable. Streetlights blink once, then vanish behind curtains of flurrying snow. Your breath fogs the window, but there's nothing to see. Time stops being measured by clocks and becomes something else: movement, stillness, breath. Eventually, the car pulls to a halt in a yard surrounded by brick and floodlights. A guard opens the door without a word. You're walked into a building that smells of rust and soap. Your name is taken but not spoken aloud. Your belongings are logged, even the ones you didn't bring. A photograph is taken, though the flash doesn't work. They use it anyway. Then the room. Small, concrete. One bulb, flickering. There's a bench along one wall and stains you do not wish to investigate. You're not alone. 5 others, maybe 6. It's hard to tell who's sleeping and who isn't. Someone coughs deep and wet. No one reacts. You sit. You wait. There is no clock, but the light never changes. It is always the same dead yellow. After some time, minutes, hours, a voice calls you. You are led to a room that pretends to be an office. There's a desk, a chair, and a single piece of paper already filled out. The man behind the desk doesn't introduce himself. He asks questions, fast, in no particular order. Do you know anyone outside the country? Have you ever said something unpatriotic? Why did you pause before answering that? You tried to be honest. Then you tried to be careful. Then you stopped trying. Eventually, he nods. Article 58, he says. Treason, sabotage, or the crime of simply existing when someone else needed to be blamed. Historians still wonder whether quotas drove more arrest than genuine suspicion. Some say it was a system consuming itself. Others believe it was worse, a system that knew exactly what it was doing. You are told you've confessed, but you didn't. That doesn't matter. You are given 10 years, a number that feels chosen at random because it probably was. You sleep again in the holding room. Someone next to you whispers a prayer in Polish. You remember you're not religious, but it doesn't stop your lips from moving along. When you wake, if you slept at all, it's to the sound of heavy doors opening. The yard again, the truck, the train station, boxcars, old, wooden, frost laced along the metal edges. The air smells like engine oil and resignation. You are handed a small bundle bread, a can of something, a thin blanket that isn't yours. You step up into the car. There are no seats, no windows, just straw and people who look as lost as you do. The door slams shut behind you. Not even a lock clicks, just finality. You huddle near a corner, knees drawn to chest, trying not to make eye contact. A child is crying somewhere near the center. No one comforts them. Perhaps their mother is gone. Perhaps she's here too, but cannot speak. The train jolts forward. No one tells you where it's going. You've heard names whispered in the walls, Magadan, Vorkuta, Kolima. But it doesn't matter. Your journey has begun. And there is no map to where you are going. You lift the pickaxe for the first time that morning, though your muscles are already trembling. There is no time to be sore. No one cares. A guard once told you flatly, work will make you warm. You believed him for exactly 1 minute. Then the wind returned and your fingertips turned grey. You are digging into frozen earth that refuses to yield day after day. Permafrost is not a poetic idea here. It's your enemy. Ice-locked soil that bites back with each strike. You swing the pick, it bounces. You try again. The shock rattles your bones. It is January and the ground has not softened since September. The camp is expanding. It always is. You are building a road to somewhere no one will ever go. Trees are felled, dragged by hand logs hauled like corpses across the snow. They used horses once. When the last one died, they didn't replace it. Now you and the others wear the harnesses. There are no reins, just shouting. You work beside men whose names you do not know. You have not asked. Names are dangerous, they come with stories, and stories come with weakness. You learn to recognize them by their coughs, their limps, the way they spit. One man sings in Polish under his breath. Another mutters to a photograph that no longer exists. You don't judge them. You'll talk to a shovel soon enough. Blisters become calluses. Calluses split, bleed, freeze and harden again. A cycle you observe without emotion. Gloves are rare, often stolen. Your pair was gone before the first snow. You fashioned wrappings from a woolen scrap of someone's dead coat. It smells like mildew and ashes. You hear bones snap sometimes. Not yours, not yet. Fingers lost to frostbite are a common sight. One man's toe fell off in his boot, and he walked for another 2 hours before removing it. When he did, he looked at the blackened nub and said nothing. He merely removed the boot, shook it, and resumed walking. The guard towers loom above you. They don't shoot often. They don't need to. The cold will do what bullets do more efficiently. Escaping into the taiga is suicide. You know of one who tried weeks ago. A single set of footprints led away. None returned. The snow closed over them like a silent mouth. One day, your pickaxe breaks. The head snaps from the handle mid-swing. You stand holding the splintered wood, unsure of what to do. No one stops. The foreman sees you. He does not speak. He raises his arm and points to the pile of rocks. You drop the handle, walk to the pile, and begin lifting stone. One after another. It is meaningless work, and you know it. But your body obeys. You no longer remember how to pace yourself. The cold teaches urgency. Rest and you shiver. Move and you survive. A man beside you collapses, thin as air. His face is blue. His lips no longer move. The guards drag him off the path and leave him by the tree line. He will not be buried. The earth won't open for him. That night in the barracks someone eats. You smell it. A stolen potato maybe. It burns in your chest more than envy. It is proof that there is still warmth somewhere. You try to remember the taste. You cannot. Historians still debate the total death toll in these camps. Records were burned. Others falsified. Some say 500,000 died in Colima alone. Others claim that number only scratches the frost. No one counts your suffering, only your output. You sleep that night beside a man who mutters in his dreams. He calls for his mother. She does not answer. No one ever does. The snow never stops. It doesn't fall in delicate flurries, but in thick, relentless curtains. It eats the sound. It buries the tracks. It flattens the world until everything's skyland memory blurs into whiteness. You wake if you ever truly slept to the cracking of ice. A body is being removed, frozen solid. 2 men lift him like a plank of wood. He had been coughing for days and then he stopped. No ceremony, no pause. Just an empty space on the plank bed. You don't know his name. You don't want to. Today your task changes. You are sent to the gold mine. They say the gold here glitters beneath the ice like the devil's lure. The USSR bleeds this land dry, not for food, not for shelter, but for gold shipped south to fund engines of war, to impress the world, to line the teeth of party officials. You dig and dig and die and dig, and the state becomes richer. You will never see the gold you extract. It will never belong to you. It may never even be real. Some prisoners claim they are digging for nothing. The mine is a wound in the earth, deep, black, screaming with echoes. You descend on a rope ladder slick with frost into a mouth that swallows the light. Inside, the air is worse. Warm enough to melt the snow on your coat, but just enough to let you smell everything. The stench of sweat blood mold. A man has slipped on the scaffolding above and crashed into the rocks. His blood glistens. It is quickly forgotten. You pick at the gold vein with a rusted chisel. There are no machines here, just muscle and will. You no longer think of escape. The concept is laughable now. Your world has shrunk to the size of this tunnel. The man beside you coughs once hard. Blood sprays on the wall. You don't look. Tuberculosis makes the rounds like an invisible guard. It chooses its victim slowly, cruelly. No warning, no pattern. One day your ribs ache. Then they split with each breath. Then you stop breathing. You are offered no protection, no masks, no light beyond the flickering oil lamp. You breathe in powdered stone and shattered lungs. Break time is a lie. You get 5 minutes to sit, and during that time you eat something that pretends to be soup. It tastes like wet dust. One man fishes a beetle from his bowl, smiles and says, "Protein." No one laughs. You once saw a man laugh, really laugh, when a guard slipped on ice and cracked his head. The laughter didn't last long. The man was taken away. You never saw him again. You think of his laughter often. It was the last truly human sound you remember. The shaft collapses later that day, not entirely, just enough to trap a man's leg beneath the beam. He screams. No one helps him. The guards hesitate. He's still useful. When the screaming stops, they check again. He is dead. Now he's just weight. They bury him in the wall, not out of mercy, but to clear the way. You drag yourself out of the mine by sunset, if there is a sun. You haven't seen it in weeks. The sky is a permanent bruise. At night, back in the barracks, someone tells a story, an old one about Moscow, about a bakery, about the smell of fresh bread. You do not believe this man has ever seen a bakery, but you let him speak. You need the sound. The lie is warmer than the silence. Sometimes you try to count the days. You stop when the numbers become meaningless. The guards wear thick coats, fur-lined. You envy them, though you know envy is useless. You watch one light a cigarette, the flare of the match the brightest thing you've seen in hours. He smokes. He stares at you. You stare back. Neither of you blinks. Years later, if you survive, you might tell someone what happened here. But they will not understand. They will nod, frown, say how terrible, and then forget. Because this place exists beyond words, beyond forgiveness, beyond belief. You dream that night. Or maybe it's a memory. Or maybe your mind is finally cracking apart like the frost-bitten wood of the bunk beneath you. In the dream, you're walking on a road made of bones. Long white femurs, skulls like cobblestones. Each step echoes and each echo whispers names you never knew. You see a man ahead digging not with a shovel, but with his bare hands. He turns. His face is yours. You wake screaming. No one reacts. This is not unusual. Your final winter in Kolyma begins like all the others, with silence, with snow, with death. But something has changed, something imperceptible. The guards grow twitchy. The supply trucks arrive late. There are rumors of Moscow shaking, of Stalin weakening. The whispers are dangerous, but they spread like fire beneath the ice. One night, a man vanishes. No fight. No sound, just gone. The next morning, there is blood on the doorframe. They say he made it. They say he reached a fishing village and escaped on a stolen boat. They say he's in Japan now, or America, or maybe he drowned in the sea 5 minutes after slipping the wire. But they say it with hope, and hope here is fatal. You tell yourself you don't care. You tell yourself you are not one of the dreamers. You eat your dust. You swing your pick. You count the days not in numbers but in dead men. Then one morning something happens. A new prisoner arrives. He is clean. His hands are soft. He wears glasses. He has never worked a mine, but he holds himself like someone who used to be feared. He doesn't speak, not yet. 2 nights later, he talks to you. I was a judge, he says. I signed the papers that sent men here. You stare at him. I thought I was saving the country, he says. They told me it was necessary. He holds your gaze. And now he shrugs. Now I learn how to dig. You say nothing. What is there to say? He coughs. You nod. You'll fit in just fine. By the spring, if it can be called spring, a strange rumor spreads. A list is coming. Names will be read. Pardons, releases, transfers. They won't say why. They won't say how many. But hope begins again. You feel it in the way men sit straighter, in the way someone hums quietly as they clean their bowl, in the way a man carves a chess piece out of bone and smiles like a child. The day comes. The guards call names. Not many, just 5. Your name is not one of them, but the judge's name is. He stands. He doesn't look at you, doesn't look at anyone, just walks toward the truck. That night you hear someone praying, not loudly, not with words, just the rhythm of breath in the dark. You sleep without dreaming. You wake with frost in your nose and the smell of rot under your blanket. Years will pass. Somehow you will leave this place. Maybe by pardon, maybe by collapse, maybe on a stretcher. And one day you will tell your grandchildren this story. And they will ask, why didn't you run? And you will laugh softly, because the truth is not in the escape. The truth is in the surviving, in the counting, in the memory of a face buried in snow, in the silence that never left your bones.